The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
We wanted to make it light enough that you didn't need a crane to get the members up there, and we wanted to be able to do it in a day. So it was one day of labor. That alone would shave at least half the cost off, because a lot of the way people were traditionally doing solar canopies was big steel with cranes, a lot of dunnage. It gets very expensive, and it's certainly way more than one day. We wanted to get it down to those parameters.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our host Tim Montague bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Today on the Clean Power Hour, developing and installing solar in the urban core of New York City. My guest today is TR Ludwig. He is the founder of Brooklyn Solar Works and Brooklyn Solar Canopy Company. Welcome to the show, TR.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
You guys have a great story. I'm really excited to bring this to my listeners. One of the things that solar EPCs or solar installers learn pretty early in their journey is that high-rise solar is difficult. The building has a small roof relative to the size of the electric load. And the higher you go, wind loads get more intense. To add insult to injury, you're dealing with an AHJ, which is probably one of the most restrictive AHJs in the universe, known as New York City. But TR, before we geek out too much on Brooklyn Solar Works, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to clean energy.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I guess I've always been quite interested and predisposed for the environmental field. My mom is a clean energy and clean earth advocate and has been since I've been born. I grew up in a family where Earth Day was a holiday, and we did our best to educate everybody that we could about the various things that we could do to improve the environment. She helped found Earth Day in our town and has been a sort of a climate warrior for a very long time. So I had that from the beginning. And in college, I majored in environmental studies and geology, so had that bent as well. And once I got into the work world, I wound up working in IT for quite some time, doing IT consulting for a larger company called Gartner. And they also have research that they provide, and they happen to be covering solar at the time. And so I got to know the analyst that covered that really well. And I'd always been really interested in starting my own business and kind of being an entrepreneur, but I wanted to do something that would do some good. And so solar really seemed like the right sort of mix of both of those things. And so around 2008, 2009 timeframe, helped start a residential solar financing company. This is one of the first in the country out in the East Coast, and met a number of my current business partners in that business. And that didn't quite go as planned, but we learned a lot of important lessons. And from there, worked for Sunrun for a bit, helped grow their East Coast presence here in New York and Massachusetts, Connecticut, Long Island, Jersey. And after a little bit of time, we all realized that because we lived in New York City, we lived in Brooklyn, we were driving by a huge opportunity to get out to New Jersey and these other places where Sunrun was serving. And so we said, hey, why not try and come up with a business where we could do solar where we live?
One more time, what year was it that you got into solar finance?
That was 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty early. I
Yeah.
like to say the modern solar industry started in about 2010 in the US, but it's been around since the 50s. The technology is very mature now. But markets are a different matter. And money talks. And as much as you and I and millions of other Americans want to save the environment, it has to jive with what's going on economically. Really, that is the driver for so much of what goes on in the built environment. And I share your love of clean energy for the environmental good that it represents. It is a great way to decarbonize the grid, and that's a significant chunk of our carbon footprint. So let's get into Brooklyn Solar, though. Brooklyn Solar Works, what was the ideation behind that? You were already working in resi and light commercial with Sunrun, and then at some point you said, "Okay, I'm gonna go be a maverick here and do this in my backyard."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so while we were at Sunrun, we opened up the New York City marketplace for Sunrun Direct. They were just a financing company when they first tried to enter into New York City. Then they bought REC Solar. This is 2013, 2014-ish, early 2014, I think. And that really changed the game because they then became an EPC and wanted to both do all the construction, selling, and financing. And New York City obviously is a pretty big market for them. So we helped to lead that expansion. And while we were doing it, we noticed that we really couldn't target flat roofs with Sunrun or really any other installer. They just weren't that interested in doing them. They were really scared off by all the fire codes and the complex permitting that came with that in New York City. And so we investigated like how you could get around some of these complex permitting requirements. In New York City, the fire code requires a 6-foot clear path on a flat roof from the front of the building to the back of the building. And that clear path needs to be 9 feet high for a 6-foot fireman to swing an axe. So it was pretty challenging to figure out how to do that on a 20-foot wide building. You really sacrifice quite a bit of the surface area of the roof. But if you develop a canopy structure that can go on these types of buildings, you can raise your system above the fire codes and comply and ease your permitting burden significantly. So we started investigating that and wound up partnering with a few really talented folks in the design community. Studio, they're based in Brooklyn as well. They do a lot of high-end design for like Google's campuses and that kind of thing. And they were really keen to collaborate with us on the idea. And this was on off hours and our spare time. We had talked with them and we're getting jazzed about it. And we knew Sunrun certainly wasn't going to support that kind of a development at Sunrun. To be fair, they were trying to grow like hotcakes with just vanilla resi at the time. And eventually, once we had a few design iterations of what we thought a canopy could look like, me and my other partners, we were like, wow, this is really awesome. We really should go do this, go develop it. And that was effectively the genesis of Brooklyn Solar Works. Was we were going to develop these canopies and we probably were going to sell them. We weren't even sure if we were going to install them at the time. And we had like a pretty basic business model in mind.
Let's get the gorilla in the room out in the open here. When you start talking about canopies on top of a building, my brain just freaks out and goes, wait a minute, that's got to be super expensive and super logistically complicated. How on earth can you make that pencil? So tell us that story. How do you make this pencil?
Yeah, the primary concept was, as we were building this canopy, we wanted to make it repeatable. We wanted to make it light enough that you didn't need a crane to get the members up there. And we wanted to be able to do it in a day. So it was one day of labor. That alone would shave at least half the cost off because a lot of the way people were traditionally doing solar canopies was big steel with cranes, a lot of dunnage. It gets very expensive, and it's certainly way more than one day. We wanted to get it down to those parameters. Those we actually got down to pretty quickly. And when you do that, the cost of these structures comes in somewhere around $1 a watt. So still quite expensive relative to certainly where things are now in terms of cost. But it eliminates all the on-site fabrication that you'd be doing if you were using steel, for example, or on-site welding. Steel here in the city is extremely expensive, so you effectively eliminate all that. And in New York City, we have additional incentives. So we have something called a property tax abatement, which basically takes 30% of the system cost, and it deducts that amount off of people's property tax. It's not exactly like an ITC, but something similar. And so that certainly helps with the payback as well. When it all is said and done, if you're getting a much larger system on there because you can cover more of the surface area of the roof, you're getting a better offset. It's a more compelling sale to a homeowner.
Right.
And then these incentives, both with the property tax abatement and right now Con Edison's power rate that's in like the 35 cents a kilowatt hour range. The combination of those things really helps get the paybacks into something that's pretty manageable, 4 to 7 years, depending.
So your core customer is like a brownstone homeowner. These are row homes, right? So they're in blocks of wall-to-wall homes. So they're individual homes, but they're very narrow and long, and they have a long, skinny roof, which lends itself to this concept that you're talking about of putting a canopy on the roof, something that you can apparently walk up to the roof. You don't need a crane, so I love that. And that you broke the design into components that are easy to lift. That's very innovative for sure. What were some of the other challenges that you had to overcome, both in the design and then the execution of this product? Because you really are hanging your hat, so to speak, with the solar company on this canopy, are you not?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of it was, early on was a ton of engineering. I was working with we had multiple structural engineering firms working with us to help craft the geometry of the canopy to make sure that it can work with a lot of these old buildings, iterating on the product so that we could do it quickly, we could get the materials. There really wasn't anything that existed off the shelf for this, so we had to build fabrication relationships, eventually extrusion relationships. We're extruding our own aluminum these days, and we had a pretty big learning curve on that. So there's been a lot of scaling up in terms of intellectual property for the product. Once we did a number in New York City, we said, hey, I think this could be a pretty cool thing to bring nationally. And so then that started a whole bunch of other engineering efforts to make sure we could engineer the structure for various wind and snow loads around the country.
And I'm curious, when you first took this concept to New York City, what was their response, and what was that process like, getting the city to accept your solar canopy?
Yeah, it was, believe it or not, by the time we got the final design that we knew we were going to build on the first one, we put it into the Department of Buildings, and usually there's like a rejection, 2 rejections. It's just sort of the way it works with Department of Buildings. But we got a permit like pretty quickly, and a lot of it was because we were complying with the fire codes. There was no lack of compliance when we applied, because the structure was designed to work with exactly what was required on the roof. So by the time we got to the DOB and by the time we really were able to file for a permit, a lot of the work we had done ahead of that sort of greased the wheels for our final steps there to get the permit, which was actually really satisfying because we had worked pretty hard up until that point. It also vetted it with a number of different people that were not necessarily in the Department of Buildings, but engineers, architects, that kind of thing.
What year was that you got your first permitted project?
That was 2015. Yeah.
So you're 9 years in, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we're nine and a half. We'll be 10 in February.
Okay.
Mhm.
And when you look back at this almost a decade now that you've been doing this, still very focused on New York City, what are some of the other lessons learned and how has your business evolved?
Wow. I think what we've learned is that some of these things take a tremendous amount of dedication. And it would have been easy for us to give up and just melt back into the typical vanilla residential business where, we could just go do pitch roofs somewhere else. We were really dedicated to it. And I think that almost naively so at the very beginning allowed us to put our head down and try and go do something that folks really had never done at scale here. And that's a really gratifying feeling. And it taught us quite a bit about what it takes sometimes to make a business work. I think the other component is just, everyone says it all the time, but it really is a people game and a people business. Finding the right people that are dedicated to the cause, that do have some passion behind them, that allow you to power through some pretty difficult times. It can be extremely frustrating, certainly with our permitting agencies and our utilities and fire department here in New York City. It's not for the faint of heart, but because we focused on this and we did so like at the very beginning, like building just the DNA of New York City into our company, that is an advantage that we have here, and it has paid off so many different times. It's also a weakness sometimes. Sometimes Department of Buildings changes the way they want things done and it really gums up our pipeline or something. We're usually one of the first companies that notices. And so we also work on behalf of the industry to try and help remove some of these barriers that exist, sometimes spontaneously appear, and we all have to try and deal with them.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. I'm curious, when you think about New York City, first of all, there's a huge variety of types of buildings in New York City, so we have to be careful about generalizing too much. But when you think about New York City versus some other major metro, maybe compared to Los Angeles, which is very different, how successful is the residential and light commercial solar market in New York now as a result of your work, do you think? What's your critical assessment?
I would say, specific to our work, I think there's no way there would be as many solar systems in our core geography that if we weren't here. There's just no company would have chosen to focus on this as much. Maybe there would. We do have competitors, of course, that try and come in and do what we do. But I think just the sheer focus of what we saw was just a wide open marketplace and these rows and rows of houses that are all right next to each other that all basically look the same. We just thought that was a great opportunity, and not nearly as much shade, not nearly as much other obstructions. Of course, there's the tall building here and there, but for the most part, it's actually pretty shade free. So that kind of gets you out of some of the traditional residential issues. But I do think we've left our mark for sure. And I don't think that there are other companies out there that really would have stuck with it as much and then developed a specific product for that market the way we have. I'm proud of that, and proud of myself and my partners for sticking with it.
I loved what you said about people. Truly, people are what make the world go round, and technology is a wonderful thing, and we can't survive and do our energy transition, so to speak, without technology. So it's a both and, but I'm a huge believer that it's your people. If you're a company, whether you're an installer, a manufacturer, a financier, an IPP, whatever your segment is, it's the people that are going to make you stand out and creating a culture. So if you had to characterize the culture of Brooklyn Solar Works, tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of work on this actually, even recently, try and better define it. For a long time, we just called it the vibe. So if someone came into the company and they got the vibe, then that was great. And it was a lighthearted, fun-loving person that was smart and capable and dedicated to solar. And that was really the main bar that we look for here. Over time, we've tried to define that a bit more. Our core values are, I think, have gotten us a lot further as we've been clearer about that. Being passionate, being committed, being adaptable, and being inquisitive. Those are the things that we felt like were really the main core attributes of the people that have done the best here at Brooklyn Solar Works, that really align the best with our company.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically how we recruit new folks. That's how we evaluate our existing staff on how well they're living up to those values. And of course, as the company changes, we may decide to change those values, but it is quite important to have folks that align there. And it can be pretty hard sometimes, especially if you're up on a super hot roof in the middle of the summer, to fulfill some of those. But we think that's what makes the difference. And if folks want to go work somewhere else because they don't believe in them, that's totally great. That's what we require of our people here.
Are you suggesting that everyone has to, at some point, go on the roof?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's important for us. We have a roof deck here in our office, and so most people have felt and touched a solar system pretty easily. But yeah, we really encourage all our people, it doesn't matter what their job is, want to get them exposure up on the roof as we're building the system. Because it's super important to connect the physical work that we're doing to whatever part of the business that person is working in. We want them to feel as connected as possible to the physical product, and also understand what half our install team is going through as they are up on hot roofs, or if it's super, super cold roofs in the middle of winter. Like, they need to know that it's not all office work here, and it's definitely some challenging stuff to get up there no matter what's going on with the weather.
Yeah, it definitely gives you an appreciation for what installers do. It's a tough job.
Yeah.
Hot in the summer, cold in the winter. And a lot of pressure to get things done in a timely manner and get them done right the first time. And then you're moving on, right? And there's probably not a lot of people thanking them for their hard work. But I'm curious, so you developed a company around an innovative product, this lightweight canopy. When did the companies bifurcate, become separate? And tell us about that journey, and how are they different today than originally?
Yeah. Brooklyn Solar Works spun off Brooklyn Solar Canopy in 2018, very beginning of 2018. So we had about 2 years of operating Brooklyn Solar Works, 2-3 years of Brooklyn Solar Works on its own, but it had the company developing the canopies. As it became clear that we really should create a product and sell it to other companies, that's when we created Brooklyn Solar Canopy, and we created a different brand for it, different branding, whole thing. And we're coming up on 6+ years actually for the Canopy company. And that's been a lot of fun too, because then it enables us to look outside of New York City, look at other markets. And so we've had a number of folks from various states around the country buy the Canopy from us. We've built out some new products within the Canopy company, a wood canopy that we're super excited about, a cantilever design, post truss design. So we've started to diversify a bit in terms of the products. And that's also been a lot of fun to build new concepts and address different canopy needs. The A-frame canopy that we originally developed serves a really great need for here in the city on a rooftop. It can be a carport. It can serve a few different needs, but sometimes it's a pretty radical design. And so some people want something a little bit tamer. And so some of our newer designs are efforts to try and meet those needs, more sort of table-like or post-truss, post and beam look.
Gosh, there's so many things that I'd love to talk about, but we're a little short on time. We should probably talk about NYSERDA. You're very involved with NYSERDA, the New York Solar Energy Industries Association. New York State has some of the best legislation for the solar industry in the U.S. You also have NYSERDA, which is an amazing R&D policy. It is a PUC on steroids. We cannot shake a stick at NYSERDA anywhere else in the United States, I would argue. But tell us a little bit about the greater landscape in New York and how the two work together, because New York is like a state in and of itself, right? Mm-hmm. It's a very unique jurisdiction. And then there's the rest of this very large state, the Empire State. But it's a both and, right? You've got a good solar market statewide. And so tell us about NYSERDA.
Yeah, I've been on the board of NYSERDA for going on 7 years now. It is pretty impressive group of folks that are all volunteer. We, except for the executive director and his staff, but the board is comprised of mostly DG, CNI, and residential founders, owners, policy people. I'm also the treasurer of NYSERDA, making sure that we're going to be a solvent association for many years to come here. But we've been doing some really great work. Our executive director, Noah Ginsberg, has been a real champion at going on offense here in New York. Felt like for a long time we were like just trying to defend against various attacks on net metering and that kind of thing. And I think we navigated that well, but we were never really pushing the policies that I think are needed to get ourselves into sort of the next phase here in New York. The governor has required us to get to 10 gigawatts by 2030. And we just recently asked her to raise the goal to 20 gigawatts by 2035. Literally, I think this week we just crossed 6 gigawatts in New York. 6 gigawatts of solar deployed. We think we can definitely hit the 10 gigawatt goal at 2030. Yeah. And 20 by 2035, that's a goal that we're asking the governor to mandate. And when we do that, we know that will then kick a whole bunch of other agencies into gear, including NYSERDA. And we know that the DG industry can deliver. We've done over 93% of the solar deployed in New York State has been done by the DG industry and folks that participate in the various NYSERDA programs.
Let's stop for a sec. Your goal of 10 gigawatts by 2030 seems ambitious but realistic. You're at 6. You've got 6 years to go. But doubling that then in 5 years, right? Obviously, the accelerator needs to be pushed sooner than 20 to get to 20 by 2035, but that is a huge jump. And so what is the essence of that jump, though? How you have to fund these things, right? You have to pour gasoline on the fire. What is the sauce there?
Yeah. That's been our work for the past 6 months or so. We've been developing this package of policies that we think can really accelerate the industry to get to those benchmarks. From our perspective, on the resi side, there's a few changes to the tax credit, the way that works here in New York State. We're asking for an increase there's a cap on that tax credit at $5,000. We're asking to increase it to $10,000. And we've been asking for a number of years, and now we think it's the time to make that happen. On the commercial side, it's all about siting. There's a lot of siting issues that crop up that cause delays in permitting and or projects to be thrown by the side. And so there's a few reforms that we're asking for there with the Department of Environmental Conservation. Believe it or not, is one that is blocking some solar development. So asking for some changes there. And then flexible interconnection. So not totally disqualifying a solar project when a transformer could clearly handle more solar, but some awfully conservative measures that are being used to approve or disapprove interconnections these days. And so we're asking for those to be reformed. But there is a tremendous amount of pipeline that's out there. And I know that we can definitely get to 10. In fact, we have 10 gigawatts in the pipeline already. So that's pretty baked, I would say. Of course, some will fall out, but we'll put in more. And just to the extent that we can really put our foot on the gas between a lot of the community solar development that's going on upstate, you can start to add gigawatts very quickly there. And between that and Long Island and New York City, it doesn't add quite as much solar capacity, but there is also a roadmap for energy storage, which we think is going to really be very important here in the city as that evolves. But
yeah, so if you go to NYSERDA's website, you'll find the 20 by 2035 report. I encourage my listeners to check that out. This is where the puck is going, right? So if you're in any other state, basically, maybe except California, there's a lot of stuff here legislatively, fundamentally, that is going to energize your clean energy transition wherever you are. So learn this, because we have to stand on each other's shoulders, right? Here in Illinois, we have a great program, but it stands on New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, of course, California, Colorado to some extent with community solar. I'm very keen to learn more about this. But what you mentioned storage, and maybe just let's wrap up there. New York is already known for a good storage incentive program, but what's coming down the pike?
Yeah, so NYSERDA recently just came out with their energy storage roadmap. That's more of a concerted effort to outline the market mechanisms and incentives that'll be necessary to spark more storage. Pretty aggressive goals there. We think it's quite possible. The big caveat is New York City. New York City's energy storage market has been quite emaciated, I would say, certainly on the residential side, but even at the industrial scale, it's just really hard to get stuff done here. Now, NYSERDA is throwing a lot of money at it now with this new plan. And so I do see that starting to come alive. I also see New York City permitting agencies, HJs, and fire department starting to get some traction there and approving projects at a higher clip. But the energy density here in the city is just so incredibly immense that we'll gobble up every megawatt hour we can of storage, because the grid is quite constrained. And because of the density and because of the sheer cost that it costs to deliver a kilowatt hour here, there's going to be some great opportunities for storage as well.
Yeah, storage is fundamentally really good for the grid, right? It's a great shock absorber. It's an instantaneous power plant when you need, if the battery's charged, and it's a sponge if it has capacity to absorb energy. So it's a super valuable asset for any grid operator or beneficiary of a resilient grid, right? When consumers have access to batteries, it does provide the opportunity to have some resiliency, which does come in handy when you have a massive storm like Hurricane Sandy, which caused massive blackouts.
Yeah. I wish we were way further ahead on that. I think we learned a lesson, but it does take time here in New York City. We're still on 2008 electrical code, so it takes longer than most to get some progress on these things, but it does feel like we're getting there.
I see you have a New York Solar Summit coming up November 6th and 7th, so check out NYSERDA.org. And if you're working in the New York area, go to the summit. That's in Albany, New York. Unfortunately, I think it conflicts with the Midwest Solar Expo, so I won't be there. But anyway, TR, how can our listeners find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so TR Ludwig. If you Google TR Ludwig and Brooklyn Solar Works, it won't be hard to find me. And then brooklynsolarworks.com is our website for Brooklyn Solar Works, and brooklynsolarcanopy.com is our sister company that sells canopies around the country.
Great. I look forward to staying in touch and following your journey, TR. It's very inspirational. Please check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. And please reach out to me on LinkedIn or at my website, cleanpowerhour.com. I love hearing from my listeners. With that, I want to thank TR Ludwig, founder of Brooklyn Solar Works, for coming on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.